Hail! What's going on, everybody? Big Dave Martell back with another book review. And today we are going to review the Heathen Handbook from the Woden's Folk Kindred. We're going to get started right away, but before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, share here on YouTube. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/thebog. Check out some shirts over there at shop.spreadshirt.com/bogshop, and go over and follow on dlive.tv/Dave Martell as you can get live episodes of The Bog. So, the Heathen Handbook by Woden's Folk Kindred. Woden's Folk Kindred is an organization down in Texas. Our boys down south, and they are headed by a guy named Burke Harbin. And Mr. Burke, let me tell you a little story about how I heard about Mr. Burke, just to get started, just like a little preface and stuff. There's a lot of stuff I want to get into with this book, so I don't want to run out of time motor mouthing like I always do. So the first time I heard about Burke was actually very negative, unfortunately. We do have a problem in this community with slander and garbage, and that needs to die. And I'll tell you what happened. First time I heard about Burke and heard about Woden's Folk, it was, don't even go listen to them. They're this, they're that, blah, blah, blah. Burke is this, Burke is that, and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, fine, I'll just stay away from them. Well, I later found out that the guy that originated these slanders, which, by the way, slander is a vice. It is an etic vice, is a Nithing. The guy that created all the slander, and he's still accepted in his little community or whatever, but he is a Nithing, he is a sleazeball, and he is a guy that goes after married women. So the guy that created this lie and spread it wanted to weaponize it against Mr. Burke. And when I found that out, I was like, you know what? This guy's no good. And that guy, you know who you are. I'm not sorry. If you don't like it, come see me. So that guy that spread that stuff about Mr. Burke, I was like, he's full of crap. And later on, Mr. Burke and the Woden's Folk started to appear on my social media. I started seeing stuff, seeing links. So I went to go check it out. And boy, was I wrong. The Woden's Folk Kindred does excellent, excellent work. They are a real stand-up organization. Burke that heads the organization, he is just loved by his guys. They are really tight down there. They are a good example of what a kindred, what a clan should look like. Great stuff. Great stuff. So later on, I started to get to know Burke a little bit. I've had some correspondence with him. I've talked to him on the phone a couple times. I've messaged him. We've gotten to know each other a little. I mean, I haven't met him or anything like that, but I've gotten to know him a little bit. And every interaction that I've had with this guy has been positive. He is polite. He is articulate. He knows his stuff. It really is about this. He's the real deal, Mr. Burke, down there in Woden's Folk down in Texas. Now, Mr. Burke, well, by the way, and he's the real deal. He's like a cowboy down in Texas. He's really goes hard for his boys in Texas. Very proud of his heritage, and they just do an excellent job, and I really, really support them. And his name is short for Berkeley, which it's not exactly a cowboy name, Berkeley the Cowboy, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? He makes up for it with all the great work that he does, and that includes this book here. That includes this book. We're going to get started talking about this book here. It's called The Heathen Handbook, and it's put together by the Woden's Folk Kindred. Now, I'm not sure if Burke wrote the whole thing and he attributed it to the Woden's Folk Kindred or if this was a collective effort, but this is a good book. I was a little scared about doing this. I've been hearing about this book. People say, hey, man, why don't you review that and stuff like that? And I was like, oh, man, I like Burke. I don't want him to get on the horn and tell him that his book sucks and then he hates my guts. But that is not the case, and in fact, far from it. So let's get started about the Heathen Handbook by Woden's Folk Kindred. Heathen Handbook by Woden's Folk Kindred. Let's get started with some criticisms. So, I don't love the art. I don't love it. I think that it looks a little disjointed. It looks a little photoshopped. Like some of the images are a little bit low quality. In my opinion, no offense, in my opinion, it could have been. It could, I don't love it. I don't love it. Secondly, probably the fourth time that I opened the book, a page fell out. That was no good, but I don't think that's on them. I think that's on Amazon or whoever their publisher is. Third, some of the text is close to the top. Like the margins are incorrect. Other than that, the layout of this book is great. This is a professionally laid out book. Whoever laid this out should be very proud, man. It's got the table of contents. I mean, the page fell out, but it's got all of the information for Woden's folk. I think, see if I can get it on there. Like where to find them and stuff like that. There are other books that they're publishing. In the back, they have a pronunciation guide. They have a very thorough bibliography. This is a professional book. It's a professionally laid out book. So let's get started about the contents of the book before I motor mouth for an hour and a half. So I didn't read every single line 100% because this is a 101 book. I didn't, and it's a thorough book. I didn't go through and reread things that I already know. You know what I mean? I pretty much just skimmed through it and I read the stuff that I felt was important. I picked out things that I felt were important to bring up for a review. I read most of it. I probably read 2/3 of this and then like skipped over some parts that were, I was like, it's like, all right, I already know. But if you're a beginner, this is absolutely a 101 book. You know what I mean? This is a 101 book. So if you're just getting into Osseltrue or heathenry or Setianism or whatever you want to call it, this is a great book to start with. In fact, this might be the best one out right now. So let's get started. And I don't know if I said this, but this is a brave book. This is a brave book. This is a book that pushes against all of the New Age misconceptions that are out there. You know what I mean? There's certain things you say that people are like, they don't want to hear it. Burke and the Woden's folk, they didn't care. They're like, no, this is the truth. So we're going to get through some of that stuff. And some of it's goes a little bit beyond theology. Now, the overall tone of this book is it's not necessarily fiery rhetoric. It's not really. This is a very matter-of-fact informational guide. The Heathen Handbook is a heathen guide. Obviously, there's a little bit in there and stuff like that. There's a little bit of stuff in there that's like, it's got some soul to it and stuff like that. But it is a matter-of-fact informational guide. So let's get started. Page 24. I felt this was really good. A question of lineage. Many people come to heathenry as part of a quest to identify for identity. This quest often leads to questions of lineage. Just who are my ancestors? Very easy at this point to latch on to an answer that is attractive and yet far too simple. Answers like I'm Irish, I'm Dutch, or my family is German do not really have any meaning outside the political structures that have solidified in Europe over the last few centuries. These answers cater to a national identity, and while there is a certain amount of pride to be had in this, absolutely, the search for identity should not stop there. For example, a person of Irish descent probably has ancestors among the Celtic Gaels who invaded the island around 500 BCE. Saxon raiders from the folk-wandering Welsh and Pictish captives brought home by Irish raiders, Norsemen who found Limerick and Dublin, Anglo-Normans, and so on and so forth. And he goes on and on and on. He's absolutely right. A country, as we understand it today, is nothing more than a political construct. It is not a folk. It is not a nation of people. A nation of people transcends lines drawn in the sand. It transcends the political definitions that are a country. If you think if your country is 100% your identity, you are what's called a civic nationalist, which is a liberal idea. What he's saying here is your identity is far more than the political constructs of countries. Countries are based around states, and all of this stuff is based on liberalism, a citizenship identity, which is not a true identity. What he's getting at here is a very important thing, understanding that countries are not identities, they are political constructs, and they were different even up to, we're talking 80 years ago, countries are different. Countries change all the time. That's not an identity. What your identity is your blood, your folk, your nation. And your nation being that has the grouping of peoples that have been sired by a patriarch. So let's go to page 32. This is one of my criticisms. He goes into talks about Orlog and Weird. While he does a good job, or they do a good job, whoever wrote this, defining Orlog, talking about Orlog translates as primal law or moving forward law. It's the primordial law. Orlog is cognate to Dharma, or Urta, cognate to Urta. I do not think that there is a difference between Orlog and Weird. I will say that. That's one of my criticisms. I believe that, in fact, it's Weird only really appears in a couple of Anglo-Saxon documents, one of them being Beowulf. In my opinion, there's not enough to differentiate Weird from Orlog, so I just say Orlog because I think it's the same thing. But he does a very good job describing Orlog, and that's a very important cosmic principle, philosophy in our faith that a lot of people don't talk about. It's one of the most important, and people don't talk about it. And then he goes on here, page 58, individual excellence within society. It may seem contradictory to assert that the heathen culture promotes strong individuality and communal obligation at the same time. This is not the case. As can easily be proven by examining the values of our ancestors, they did not see a contradiction between what was good for the folk and good for the individual. They saw a unity they called excellence. I think this is wonderful. This is like completely knocking off rugged individualism, all that stuff. It knocks it off completely. And it says there is no difference between the individual and the collective. There is only like the collective. There is no different. You are an individual, but you are part of a greater mass, a greater body. There's no such thing as autonomy. There's no such thing as true individualism. And he does a very good job outlining this here. So that's something that'll trigger New Agers because they're all individualists. Then he goes on to, speaking of triggering New Agers, he talks about women and heathenry. And he does a very, very good job of this. And he actually takes he dispels quite a few things, a couple things, and then goes on to outline femininity and heathenry in a very positive way and a very strategic way. I might add. Heathenry is a naturally empowering faith for women. Since it is the system of belief that arose with our ancestors in ancient times, this should come as no surprise. Our ways are what allowed our ancestors not only to survive, but to thrive in some of the most adverse conditions. Unfortunately, the rebirth of our faith has been more focused on the male aspects, and this has had a tendency to make women feel uncomfortable. Far too often, our faith is represented as a hyper-macho, chest-bumping Viking berserker faith. Heathenry is touted as a warrior faith, a faith of fighters, and not for the faint of heart. But this is inaccurate. Tyr the Wolfbinder is the god of warriors that defend their people. But without a people to defend, what worth would warriors have? And then he goes on to say that we are a heroic religion, not a warrior religion necessarily. Women were valued and respected members of our ancestors' society. They would be equally valued and respected by modern heathen communities. Today, a great many women are taking a leading role in the greater blah, blah, blah. He goes on to say, ancient heathen women were leaders, counselors, healers, vulvas, business managers, and much, much more. But the key thing that he says in this whole thing, are they not courageous fighters with stout hearts that face the pains and dangers of childbirth to bring our most valued treasures into this world? That's a big deal, what he just says here, because he's not buying into the feminist crap. He's not buying into all the nonsense. He's saying that, no, on one side, we are not this like Viking bro LARP stuff, but also we are not like this modern new age feminist crap either. You know what I mean? Our women are very loved and respected, but they're also expected to fulfill their feminine duties for the tribe. So that's really, really great stuff. He kind of dispels the Viking bro stuff, and he dispels feminism in the same stuff, in the same page. So this is another brave one. This is good stuff here. 172, Loki. Loki is the enemy of the gods. He is included here amongst the Aesir for convenience of organization because his former status. He is present in nearly every story in the lore because he either starts the trouble that this story is about, or the Aesir know that Loki's cunning and deceit will help get them out of whatever trouble they are in. Even if he helped the gods sometimes, few had high opinion of Loki in ancient times. In Havamal, Odin advises us to judge a wife when wedded, a weapon when tried, ice when 'tis crossed, and ale when 'tis drunk. We should likewise judge Loki by the results of his actions and realize that he leads evil forces against the gods and men at Ragnarok. Hail to that. Death to Loki. And he really smashes it out of the park with that. It makes me sick seeing and hearing people talk about Loki veneration. And he goes on the binding of Loki. Loki is an amoral figure. And this is a big one, too. He talks about cult of Loki. There is no evidence of any cult of Loki. There is no place, names, or personal names that contain any element of his name. If there were rituals that concerned Loki, they probably revolved around binding him as the Romans ritually bound the chaotic Sylvanus each year. In modern heathenry, many groups forbid any praise of Loki during ritual, and he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. If you're listening to goofballs like Aerith Harger or whatever his name is, and you're listening about all this Loki, Thirsa True, all this crap, if you take that to a respectable organization and you try to bring that up at bloat, they're going to throw your ass out. You know what I mean? That's who would want to worship the father of the monsters that bring about Ragnarok? It's ridiculous. He says, modern Loki. It is an unfortunate truth that even though the Aesir bound Loki until Ragnarok, his influence is still felt in our world. He is the urge to destroy for the pleasure of destruction. He is the crush of tyranny on the helpless. He is the tragedy of those who succumb to a dissolute life without purpose or value. My man, pots and pans. Loki is hedonism as opposed to heathenism. That's a strong one. That's a strong one. There's some real bangers in this book, man. Let's go to the next one here. And then he talks about Gulvig. And I've heard people talk about how they worship Gulvig and she's their matron and all this crap. Gulvig, perhaps the most important enemy of the gods. Gulvig is called by many names, and so on and so forth. It is Gulvig that first corrupts the magical forces in the flow of weird through the tree. She then teaches terrible magic to evil souls in Midgard. Gulvig plots with other enemies of the gods to bring about Baldur's death. For her crimes, Gulvig is attacked and burned by the gods. She's burned alive 3 times. Burned alive. Who would worship something that the mighty gods burned alive? For their evil and their wickedness. Here's another strong one. This is a brave. Just speaking truth. Doom of the dead. One of the most commonly asked questions about our faith is, what do you believe happens when you die? The prominence of this question is both a result of natural human curiosity, about the unknown and the emphasis of the desert face put on the afterlife. Yeah, this is, who doesn't want to know what happens to their soul after they die? Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. There's a human curiosity about the mysteries of the other worlds and stuff like that. And who wouldn't, who doesn't want to know? Who doesn't want to know? Judging from the Havamal verse above, as well as numerous other passages in the lore, the doom of the dead was on our ancestors' minds just as much as it is on ours. Doom, incidentally, is the English version of the Old Norse domr, which means judgment or fate. It does not have the same negative associations that doom has in English. The last line of the verse would better be read, the judgment over each one dead, or the fate over each one dead. And then, he goes on to talk about the afterlife. It even references Victor Rydberg. And what he's talking about here with the last line is he's talking about cattle die, kinsmen die. Thyself too soon will die. One thing I know will wither never, the doom over each one dead. That's a line from Havamal, obviously. And then he goes on to talk about Afterlife and stuff like that. And this is probably the one that I see when people criticize this book. This is what they moan about the most. For most people, the missteps of their lives are left behind, and they are invited to join the ranks of their ancestors who lived together in Urd's domain next to the Holy Well. This is the hell of our ancestors, a place where the dead are rejoined with kin and spend ever after free from the worries that dogged them in Midgard. Here they remain part of the eternal kin line that stretches far into the future, and from the ranks of these ancestors are drawn the elves and mound dwellers who give aid to their kin living in Midgard. Beautiful wording. For those who are rejected by the gods and kin, there is no hope. They are driven from the Thingstead to the gates of Niflhel, the frost-cold place of death inhabited by the vilest creatures and villains. Here they die a second tormented death away from kin with no hope of escape. My man, you got to have some nut to come out and say that so bravely among these people that are just merely Christian reactionaries that are not truthful with their faith and are not in the business of promoting truth and authentic religious experience. So he goes on, and it says 238, other Indo-European tales of the end, talking about Ragnarok, and he's proving Ragnarok here, saying that it's not a Christian injection. It's found throughout all Indo-European traditions. And I'm starting to get pretty long here, so we're going to try to skip through it. He goes into talking about runes and ritual. As stated in the previous section, New Age claims to knowledge of ancient rune divination techniques that go beyond what is given in Tacitus are pure nonsense. Attempts to tie rune divination to tarot cards or the I Ching are equally ridiculous. Trying to tie rune divination to tarot cards is ridiculous. That's what he says. My man. I don't know what the I Ching is. I'll be honest with you. I've never even heard of it. Probably some weird Wiccan thing. Then he goes on to talk when he's talking about runes and stuff like that. The proper interpretation of the runes is a matter of great controversy. There are many New Age pop occult books out there that offer outlandish meanings for the runes. As a general rule, these fantastic meanings are drawn from Kabbalah, the tarot, I Ching, or whatever oracular flavor of the month might be. My man. He goes in to talk about Galder and stuff like that. And my biggest disagreement in here is his segment on Seidr. And I don't have enough time to go into all that. But actually, Mr. Burke or whoever's from Woden's Folk, I would actually like you to come onto the bog so we could discuss it, maybe even debate a little bit. So I did want to read one more thing that he mentions in here that's very important. Sexual deviants were called nithings by our ancestors, and such people were universally exiled or killed. It is completely illogical to think that and then he's talking about Seidr and stuff like that. And that's a good argument. He has a good argument on that. And I would like to bring him on to discuss with it and present our side of the argument and stuff like that. So let's wrap it up here. Heathen Handbook. Despite some of my criticisms in the beginning, and no offense to whoever did the art, it's just not. I just don't. I don't love it. I'm sorry. Just being honest. I would like to see there be more margin in the top with the page layout and stuff like that. And Amazon or whoever published it, you got to put this thing together a little bit. You know what I mean? But other than that, the Heathen Handbook, in my opinion, is probably the best 101 heathen book out there on the market today. It's probably the best one. Not going to lie. 9 out of 10 on the Heathen Handbook. 9 out of 10 for the Woden's Folk Kindred and Mr. Burke Harbin. You guys should be very, very proud of this work that you did. And hail to you guys. If you're down in Texas, you're a heathen down in Texas, or you're interested in getting involved with the community, reach out to the Woden's Folk. Now, let me find their website for you. I'm going to look it up. Just go to wodensfolkkindred.org. WODENS FOLKKINDRED.org. Visit our page, Woden's Folk Kindred, on Facebook or Instagram. And they got other books too. So that's it. That's it for the Heathen Handbook. I hope you guys pick up a copy and you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I hope it's useful for anybody that's looking for a one-on-one book and looking to get involved with this faith and stuff like that. So hail to the Woden's Folk, hail to the Heathen Handbook, and hail to you guys. I'll see you guys next time.